You learned how to listen before you learned how to speak honestly. You could hear tension in footsteps, in cabinet doors, in the way silence changed shape inside a room. You became careful before you became young. And somewhere deep inside you, there is still a child who believes love disappears the moment you stop holding everything together. What happened to you that made being needed feel safer than being held? You became the calm one, the reasonable one, the mature one. Adults praised you for it without noticing what it cost. You learned how to shrink your needs until they became almost invisible. You stopped crying loudly, stopped asking twice, stopped expecting comfort to arrive on time. And eventually, you became easier to rely on than to love. People called you independent, but independence was never the goal. It was what grew in the place where reassurance should have been. You became emotionally useful. That changes a child. You learned how to scan faces before speaking, how to predict moods before they arrived, how to become whoever kept the room stable. You called it maturity, but your nervous system called it survival. Because when a child feels responsible for everyone else's emotional weather, their own inner world slowly disappears into the background. And years later, you still apologize for having needs that were never wrong to have. The strange thing is, you probably looked fine from the outside. Responsible children often do. You smiled in the right places, handled things early, comforted other people before anyone noticed you were drowning quietly underneath your own composure. And because nobody saw visible chaos, nobody understood how lonely it felt to become emotionally self-parented. You learned to carry pain privately. And then something confusing happened when you grew older. You became the person everyone leaned on. Friends, partners, family. People trusted your steadiness because they could feel how carefully you carried other people. But underneath that reliability, there was still a frightened child, terrified that rest would make everything collapse. So you stayed useful, even when exhausted, even when overwhelmed, even when your body quietly begged for softness you did not know how to receive. Because somewhere inside you, love still felt conditional. But beneath all of it, there was always a child waiting to discover that love could exist without performance. A child who wanted to be chosen before being useful, comforted before being composed, held before being helpful. And maybe the deepest exhaustion inside you was never weakness. Maybe it was the grief of carrying emotional weight that was never meant for small shoulders. Maybe your nervous system was never failing. Maybe it simply never learned that safety could arrive without vigilance. And maybe healing begins the moment that child inside you realizes you survived by adapting, not because you were ever too much to love.